A grizzly bear cub, no more than 4 months old, lies dying at the base of a snow-covered cliff. Its breaths are short, ragged. The storm that took its mother hasn't stopped, and the temperature keeps dropping. No one is coming, not a human, not another bear. He's completely alone. Until, out of the white, silent cold, comes a shape, a wolf, old, scarred, limping with age. But his eyes are alive. And instead of killing the cub, instead of walking past, he does something no one would believe if they hadn't seen it. Get ready for a story that will break you and then build you back up again. The wind came in sharp, tearing through the pines like claws. Snow had started the night before, light, gentle, but by dawn it had turned violent. The sky over the Gallatin Range was white and shapeless, and visibility was down to barely a few feet. Trees groaned under the weight, branches snapped like bones in the wind. Somewhere in the heart of it all, a grizzly sow fought to stay upright. Her 2 cubs huddled against her belly, trembling. She'd been leading them back toward a hollow she remembered from years ago, dry, safe, under a fallen cedar. But the storm caught them on the open ridgeline, where the wind had no mercy and the snow came in sideways. Then the slope gave way. The snow had built up fast on the cliff edge. She stepped on it once, just once, and it crumbled beneath her paws. She fell. Not far, but far enough. The cubs tumbled after her, soft bodies colliding with rocks and ice. When the world stopped moving, she didn't. The smaller cub, the male, woke first, alone. The storm still howled. Snow blew into his eyes, stinging like nettles. He tried to crawl, crying softly, but his left leg dragged uselessly behind him, a break, clean, deep. He whimpered. Then he saw her, his mother, sprawled in the snow, head tilted at an unnatural angle, one paw twitching, the other still buried in powder. He crawled to her, nudged her neck with his nose. No breath. No sound. The storm roared louder in her silence. He lay beside her, as close as he could, burying his face in her fur to stay warm. His body shivered uncontrollably. He cried out once, but it was eaten by the wind. He stayed there until night, then until morning, still breathing, barely, but alive. Miles away, across the forest, an old wolf smelled death. He hadn't run with a pack in 3 winters. His back leg had been crushed by a falling log during a chase. He survived, but not well. The younger wolves left him behind. The prey got faster. The snow got deeper. Still, he moved. Still, he hunted, not for a kill that day, but for something else, something pulling him toward the ridgeline. When he reached the base of the cliff, the wind had quieted. The cub didn't move when he approached, couldn't. The wolf stepped slowly, carefully, ears up, and stopped less than a foot from the cub's broken body. He sniffed, paused, then, instead of baring teeth, instead of turning away, he lay down beside the cub and waited. The cub woke slowly. The cold hadn't left, it was inside him now, in his ribs, his paws, even behind his eyes. He tried to move, but the pain in his leg was sharp, immediate. He whimpered. Then he noticed the warmth, a body pressed gently against his, but not his mother. His eyes opened fully for the first time since the fall. What he saw made him freeze, not from cold, but from something deeper, a memory buried in bone. A wolf, big, scarred, gray as ash, with one milky eye and ears notched from a lifetime of fights. The cub didn't move, didn't blink. Predators know when death is near. But the wolf didn't attack. He didn't bare his teeth or growl. He stayed still, breathing steady. His chest rose and fell in rhythm with the wind. Outside, snow clung to his coat. His ribs showed slightly beneath the fur, old, thin, but calm. The cub watched him, wide-eyed. Then, slowly, instinctively, he pressed in closer, for heat, for something that felt, if not safe, then at least not dangerous. The wolf glanced at him once, just once, then turned his head and looked toward the trees, ears twitching. He was listening for something. Or someone. That night, the storm returned, colder, sharper. The cub tried to cry but couldn't find the strength. The wolf curled his body tighter around the cub. His head rested across the cub's flank. He was too weak to hunt, too slow to run. But in that moment, he did something he hadn't done since his last pack vanished into the snow. He protected. By morning, the world was white and blinding. The cub opened his eyes again and felt the warmth still beside him. The wolf had not left. But now he was moving, slow, deliberate. He rose stiffly, took a few steps, then stopped, turned his head, waited. The cub blinked at him, then made a noise, not a growl, not a whine, just a sound, soft, almost asking. The wolf walked a little farther, then looked back again. A pause. An invitation. The cub dragged his broken leg behind him, struggling to stand. He collapsed twice. The third time, he stayed up, wobbly, shaking, but standing. He followed. Not because he knew where they were going, but because he wasn't supposed to be alone. They moved slowly, a few steps at a time. The wolf stopped often, let the cub rest, waited, always waited. And that night, when they found a hollow under a rock ledge, the wolf let the cub curl against his side again. No words. No pack. Just two creatures who had lost everything and were somehow all the other had left. The forest was still under snow, but it had changed. The wind had softened, the sun broke through in short bursts, scattering gold across the frozen ground. But warmth was still far away. The old wolf moved through the trees with a limp, not silent, not fast, but precise. Every movement mattered. He hadn't hunted in days, not properly, and what little strength remained was burning fast. But now he wasn't just hunting for himself. The cub needed food. He had seen the way the little grizzly curled tighter at night, the way his breathing hitched, the way he cried out in his sleep. The wolf had raised pups before, long ago, back when his coat was darker and his gait didn't catch with every step. This cub was no wolf, but pain sounded the same across all species. And so did hunger. He found tracks by a frozen creek. Rabbit, old, but fresh enough. He followed, waited, then struck. It wasn't graceful. He slipped once, landing hard on his bad leg. But he got it, barely. It was small, barely more than a mouthful. But it was enough. He didn't eat. He turned and limped back toward the hollow. The cub was there, where he'd left him, shivering, eyes dull. When he smelled the blood, he stirred. The wolf dropped the rabbit at his paws and backed away, watching. The cub didn't hesitate. He tore into it with weak, clumsy bites, raw, cold, perfect. That night, the cub leaned harder against the wolf's chest. His breathing had steadied, his eyes opened wider now. The wolf closed his own eyes, and for a moment, the pain in his leg faded. He didn't sleep. He listened to the trees, to the wind, and to the sound of life, fragile and real, breathing beside him. A branch cracked in the distance. The wolf was up instantly, standing between the cub and the woods, ears forward, teeth exposed. But it was nothing. A deer, maybe, moving through the brush. Still, he stayed there until morning, watching, guarding. The next day, the cub tried to stand again. He made it farther, stumbled, fell, got up. This time he didn't cry when he fell. He looked at the wolf and waited. And the wolf turned, limped ahead, and looked back. Come, not with words, but with presence. And the cub followed. The ice was beginning to melt along the creek's edge. The water didn't rush yet, it whispered. Soft trickles curved through cracks in the snow, revealing black stones slick with cold and time. The old wolf stepped into the clearing, with the cub trailing behind him, dragging his hind leg, but walking farther now, stronger. The cub stopped at the water's edge, hesitated, then dipped his snout in. Drank. The wolf stood still, his reflection broken by the current. He scanned the forest. He always scanned the forest. Miles away, Graham Keller, 51, moved slow through the woods, binoculars around his neck, notebooks in his satchel, one faded photo in his breast pocket, a grizzly cub. The one he couldn't save. That had been 6 years ago, and it had never left him. He worked wildlife rehab now, quietly, voluntarily. Tracking injured animals was the only thing that helped him sleep. He had spotted the trail by accident, paw prints beside a limping canine track. Unusual. Unnatural. He followed them for hours. What he found stopped him cold. Through the trees, he saw them, the old wolf, scarred, slow-moving, and beside him, a bear cub. Thin. Weak. But alive. Graham didn't move, didn't blink. His first thought was confusion. Then awe. Then guilt. How long had they been surviving like this? He raised his binoculars, zoomed in. Saw the way the cub leaned against the wolf's side. Saw the way the wolf angled his body toward the woods, shielding, protecting. This wasn't opportunistic. This was something else. He stepped forward. A single crack of a branch. The wolf's head snapped up, eyes locked, not fear, not rage, recognition. Like he'd seen men before. Like he remembered what they brought, food, death, noise. Graham froze, lowered himself, sat. He made no sound. Only waited. The cub didn't run. He watched, wide-eyed, curious. And the wolf didn't move. Minutes passed. The air shifted. Time slowed. Then the wolf turned, not to flee, but to lead. He limped back toward the trees. The cub followed. But before vanishing into the brush, the cub looked back at Graham, longer than he needed to. And Graham knew they weren't just surviving. They were healing. Graham returned the next morning. No tranquilizers, no cameras. Just supplies, a thermal blanket, strips of dried meat, water, and a field notebook. He left them near the clearing where he'd seen the cub and the old wolf. Then he backed away. Slowly. Quietly. If they wanted to come, they would. For 3 days, Graham watched from a distance. Each time, the wolf arrived first, cautious, sniffing the wind. Then the cub, always close behind. The wolf would circle the food without touching it. But the cub, he dove in. Greedy. Grateful. Graham noted every movement, how the cub walked straighter now, how the limp was still there but less dragging, more limping. Healing. Because of the wolf. Because of something deeper than instinct. On the 4th day, it changed. Graham woke early, hiked to the ridge where he usually observed. But the clearing was empty. No paw prints in the snow. No movement. Just silence. He tracked west, carefully, following old trails. Then he found it. Blood in the snow. Fresh. Not the cub's, too dark, too much. A trail, staggering, heavy. and near it, a single set of prints. Wolf. He moved faster. 200 yards in, under the shade of a leaning pine, he found the old wolf. Collapsed. Chest heaving. A wound across his side, long, deep. A puncture. Maybe from an antler, maybe a tusk. Could have been a defensive strike from prey that didn't want to die. The wolf's eyes opened as Graham approached. But he didn't growl. Didn't bare teeth. Just watched. Tired. Resigned. The cub sat beside him, silent, confused, his small body pressed against the wolf's ribs as if trying to hold in the warmth. Graham didn't move for a long time, just crouched. Then, slowly, carefully, he removed his coat, laid it beside the wolf, then reached for the cub. The cub resisted at first, then melted into his arms. He carried the cub back to camp, wrapped him in blankets, fed him, waited. That night, he returned with painkillers, a water bowl, and gauze. The wolf was still there, breathing, barely. Graham didn't sedate him, didn't touch him, just sat nearby, spoke softly. "I know what you did. I saw it. You didn't have to, but you did." He left food, left warmth, but didn't stay. The wolf wasn't his. He belonged to something older than cages and collars. The next day, the wolf was gone, no blood, no body, just paw prints leading away toward the trees, toward the mountains. The rehab center was a log cabin at the edge of a protected zone, surrounded by trees that still held snow in their shadows. Inside, it was warm, quiet, and not meant for wild things. Graham had converted one room for the cub, soft bedding, safe walls, no bars. Still, the cub paced. He healed fast, too fast. His limp was nearly gone. The scar above his paw was clean and pink. But his restlessness only grew. He didn't play, didn't make noise. He just waited. Every evening, just after sunset, he'd press his nose to the glass of the back window and look toward the tree line. Graham took notes, fed him carefully, led him outside in a large enclosed run, logs, boulders, even a climbing post. But it wasn't the forest. And the cub knew. One morning, Graham woke early, checked the enclosure like always, and found it empty. The gate hadn't been left open, it had been torn open, bent metal, claw marks. No panic, no violence, just determination and direction. Graham followed the tracks. The paw prints were fresh, clear, confident. He followed for nearly a mile before he saw the first sign, a second set of prints, wider, deeper. Not bear. Wolf. The old one. Then, farther ahead, on a sunlit ridge overlooking the trees, he saw them. The cub stood first, back straighter, shoulders square. Then the wolf appeared from behind a rock, still limping, still alive. They didn't touch. They didn't speak. But they stood together, like statues carved from trust. Graham didn't move. He didn't call, didn't cry out. He just stood there, hat in hand, and watched. The wolf turned first, walked into the trees. The cub hesitated, looked back once, saw Graham, held the gaze. Not goodbye. Just thanks. Then he turned and followed. Graham stood alone on the ridge for a long time. Not sad. Not even surprised. Just full, the kind of full you only feel when you've let something go and it comes back on its own terms. That night, he wrote one line in his journal, "Some bonds aren't meant to be tamed. Only honored." 3 years passed. Seasons came and went in quiet rhythm. The snow returned, melted, returned again. Graham stayed near the edge of the forest. He still tracked, still walked the ridgeline. But something had changed. He wasn't searching anymore. He was waiting. Most days, nothing came. Sometimes he'd find faint tracks, a bear here, a wolf there, but never both together. Not like before. The old wolf, he figured, had moved on. Maybe gone. And the cub, grown now. Wild. Right where he belonged. But on the 3rd anniversary of the morning the cub escaped, Graham woke early, earlier than usual. Something pulled him from his bed. Not a sound. Not a dream. Just the kind of pull that lives in your bones when a promise is about to be kept. He packed a thermos of coffee, put on his old field coat, and walked. The snow was light that morning, floating more than falling. The trail to the ridge was half melted, patches of dry earth showing between roots. The trees whispered. The creek sang somewhere down below. Then he saw the prints, fresh, wide. One set. Bear. He reached the ridge before the sun broke fully over the mountains. And there, standing between 2 trees like a shadow carved from morning, was a bear, large, thick-coated, eyes sharp but not afraid. The scar on the front paw was still there, faded but real. Graham froze. The bear looked at him for a long time. Nothing moved. Then, behind the bear, another shape emerged, smaller, gray, thin. A wolf. Not old. Not limping. Young. Alert. The old one was gone. But this one bore his spirit. The bear didn't roar, didn't run. He just looked, lowered his head once, and turned, walked into the trees. The young wolf followed. Together. Just like before. Graham stood alone on the ridge for a long time, breath fogging in the still air. He didn't call out. Didn't follow. He just smiled, the kind of smile you save for moments you know will never come again. The kind of smile that says, you made it. That evening, he wrote one last entry. He remembered. That's all I ever needed. If this story moved you, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who still believes in quiet miracles. Because sometimes the wild gives back more than we expect. And sometimes, what we save ends up saving us.